Good morning, dear students of class 12th. I, Kazim Ali, welcome you once again to this online class. Today we are going to take up the second part of the lesson titled Leh, written by Andrew Harvey. But before we begin, let's try to summarize, let's try to revise what we read earlier. In the first part of the video lesson, we read about the writer's visit to Leh and his visit and fascination by the royal palace of Leh. Later on, we also get to know that he visited Stock, and on the way to Stock, he saw a suspension bridge, prayer flags, and he had a very candid conversation with a young Ladakhi driver. And we also, towards the end of the first part of the video lesson, we got to know that Andrew Harvey, or the narrator, he decided not to visit the small rooms of the Stock Palace, but to wander into the valleys, wander into the wilderness, into the mountains of Ladakh, and to explore it personally, physically. So today we are going to continue with continue studying his further experiences in the mountains of Ladakh. So the narrator tells us that as he walked higher and higher in the altitudes, all the day, he had different types and different levels of experience. He said that in comparison to looking at the mountains of Leh from a distance, it's a completely strange feeling looking at them. It's a completely strange feeling walking in them, and it's very different from looking at those mountains through the shifting lights of the valley against the vast, brilliant emptiness of the sky. But to walking in them, into their inner paths, into their inner valleys, is a completely different, strange experience. It's more like when we see a thing from a distance, it looks like very small to us. For example, if we look at a mountain from a few miles away, and if we compare it with some objects, we feel like we see that mountain is exactly about the size of the small objects you have in your hand. But when we reach that mountain, when we reach that place, and when we start walking that mountain, walking into those valleys, we realize that it's a much heavy job, much physically excruciating work. So similarly, the writer tells us the difference between watching or seeing a mountain from the distance and the changing shades of sun on it, and also the physical experience of visiting and walking through them. He further continues that when he walked through those paths in the mountains, on the sides of the path, on the sides of the way, there were floods of blue color sprinkled all away. Like there were rows of blue color flowers along the way. And he also saw that a fierce wild grass was growing between the boulders. Such a vegetation had that strong vigor to grow among boulders, which we usually see if we visit mountains in Ladakh. We see some hard, some physically vigorous vegetative flora growing between hard rocks in the valleys and mountains of Ladakh. Similarly, he saw such a thing. And he also tells us that he felt that every quarter of an hour the heat was increasing a little bit, and the rocks was changing in a way that it was growing more and more fantastical. This was his experience while walking through the paths in the mountains of Stock, or mountains of Leh Ladakh. Then he to express the vigor, to express the physical physical hardness of these fiercely growing grass between the boulders. He gives us an explanation. He gives us a physical description of it in such a way that I will quote from the lesson. Wings of cathedrals falling into the river below, large fluted columns, like the hermit purse of Cappadocia, with green moss spilling over from their height. In this short sentence, in this short paragraph, in this short section, he tells us that those grass has their branches falling into the river, and they looked like fluted columns, and which were similar to the hermit purses of Cappadocia. Cappadocia was a settlement in early Christianity, where still it continues that it has certain hillocks, certain groups of small vertical hills. So these green grasses had their wings, had their branches falling into the river, which looked like these kept hillocks of Cappadocia. And it was also having green, also having moss, which we call this small grass growing around them. So this he felt like he had a some sort of deja vu, that he had seen this kind of vegetative growth somewhere else, or he was comparing such a vegetative growth to something else. And after that, he tells us that it was not the mountains, not the rocks and their dazzling forms which excited, which moved him the most, but it was the signs. It was the signs and signature and presence everywhere in this wilderness of Ladakh of the human companionship. Nowhere in the mountains, though Ladakh is scarcely populated, he felt alone. He felt isolated. Wherever he went, he saw he saw evidence of existence of people. He saw a human companionship. He saw human signs. And then he continues describing, presenting us various signs, various human existence, evidence of human existence, which he saw on the way. He tells us that he saw two men who were walking, who were coming down with a donkey laden with brushwood. The donkey was laden with brushwood, and they smiled proudly when they saw the visitor, when they saw the tourist, and went on their way. And they must have been working high in the mountains and collecting woods for the harsh winter months we have in Ladakh. They were cutting woods, and finally, after cutting and collecting them, they were carrying them. They were carrying them on a donkey. And after that, he said that he just guessed. He just give us a guess that these woods would have been cut from the bushes which grow in the narrow gorges or valleys of the mountains. And after that, he says that the second, or another example of the existence of humans in Ladakh everywhere is the mantra, this mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, which is curved on at many places all over the valleys, all over the mountains. And if I give you a literal translation of this mantra in English, it means transformation of your impure body, impure speech and mind into pure body, mind and speech, which would be similar to that of the great Buddha. So he saw this mantra curved at many places, and this again gave him an example of the existence of humans everywhere in Ladakh. And he tells us that this mantra seemed to him that it was breathing their sacred words silently between rocks or bed of flowers sprinkled moss. So this mantra curved on rocks was breathing sacred words into the whole air of whole valley of Ladakh. And secondly, he saw lotus, which are shrines to the spirits of rocks and the air of Ladakh, which had the zo, very familiar sight in Ladakh, and it has the Zo horns and bones which had whitened to a great extent and was piled up in huge amount around those latos. Then again he tells us the third sign, that is of shrines to the gods of the landscape, which are older than the Buddhist gods but have been reconciled to Buddhism, which have now been completely engulfed into the Buddhist faith. Though these shrines are older than Buddhism, these shrines are something very old, but after the reaching of Buddhism in Ladakh, this has been reconciled into Buddhism also. After that, he saw the gods of tempest, avalanche, and gods of streams, which brings wealth to the valleys, wealth to the areas, wealth to the region of Ladakh by the pure water, by the fertile soil they bring with them. After that, he tells us about the prayer flags which he saw. Those prayer flags, they were lonely, ragged, and they were torn to pieces, but still existing, still enduring, and present on the high pinnacles of rocks which the writer was facing above him. And these flags were flapping in the wind, and again was presenting a sight to the writer, a sight to the narrator, which meant that they are breathing their holy mantras, holy prayers everywhere in the valley and spreading the words of the Buddha. After that, the narrator tells us that this wilderness of the rocks, this wilderness of the light is still untamed. They are still powerful and frightening if one visits the high altitudes of Ladakh. And he compares Leh Ladakh and tells that Leh Ladakh is completely different from the inhuman solitariness of Antarctica and Sahara, where for miles and miles of distance you would not see even a single human hamlet, single human hut. But in Ladakh, if you visit any mountain, you would see from the height certain villages, certain prayer flags, and many others which I discussed earlier, which would assure you that humans exist in Ladakh, and somewhere you will get some human companionship. After that, he says that everywhere in Ladakh you will find small marks of human love and prayer. And then while resting on a rock, he saw that the rock on he was sitting was ringed by stones. It was having a circle of small boulders and stones, which was done by the earlier travelers to Ladakh, or earlier travelers on that path. After that, he said that when he reached certain highest part of the pass, he was too tired to go any further. And while sitting there, he noticed that a deserted shepherd's hut was there, whose roof was torn off by the wind, and a small bush rose was growing in one of the corner walls. And here he, again feeling human companionship, again feeling evidence of human existence, he decided to have his bread and cheese, which was his lunch or his refreshment. He carried that all the way through his journey, and at this spot, in this place, he decided to have it. After that, he see that the wall of the shepherd hut had this word written in charcoal. The word was Om. Om in Tibetan Buddhism means wholeness, perfection, and infinity, which relates to higher and lofty spirits, higher and lofty philosophy. So he saw this word written everywhere on the wall, just this one letter, and again after each letter, again, like in the like below each letter, there was a rough sketch of the Buddha's face, which was in a way suggesting that Buddha is Om. Buddha is an example of perfection, wholeness, or infinity. So this was the all about the second part of the lesson titled Leh, written by Andrew Harvey. After this, we can spare some moments in discussing the various aspects of the story, various aspects of this beautiful, intriguing prose piece. So, again, coming back to the question we asked at the beginning of the lesson, is there anything left in Leh? Or what is Leh's charm which is still existing, which is still present? So the narrator presents to us, the narrator through his prose tells us that the charm and the wealth of Leh is the spiritual bliss, is the spiritual fulfillment, the meditative calmness and the peace of mind which it has to present to all the world. It has to present its visitors. The peace of mind it has to present to the visitors to Ladakh and the foreigners who are fascinated by this mysterious land. And the narrator in a way gives Ladakh an oriental look. Orientalism was a word coined by Edward Said, which though at that times meant the Arab world, meant the East, and the East was presented by the Oriental, by the early scholars of Britain and other places. They presented the East as something which is having precious resources, precious metals, mysterious cultures and people, and uncivilized and savage people residing them. In a way, it was a reason, it was a triggering force in the whole episode of colonialism, which was a big chapter in the whole history of humankind. So this Orientalism, this Oriental look towards the East, sort of ignited, sorts of gave the Westerners, gave the West an idea, a concept, courage to visit and capture and unravel the mysteries of the East. Similarly, he gives Ladakh such an Oriental outlook, and he tells us that that Ladakh is an object of, or Leh is an object of worship, and it has, in comparison to the other places of the East, it has spiritual gold as the main resource. And the culture and tradition of Ladakh is also intriguing, is also interesting. But a person could also question himself, a person could be curious at this part, like somewhere in the story, that why would a visitor, why foreigners visit Ladakh so frequently, why there are so many foreign tourists or like Indian local tourists to Ladakh. It's because of because they are fed up with the hustle bustle of the town. They hate the hectic routines they have to follow in the metropolitan cities like London, New York, Delhi, Mumbai, or any other big city, and they are completely irritated by the noise, the pollution, the crowding, and the stress, which are the very parts of daily existence in a huge city. So they visit places, they visit these hill stations like Ladakh, Shimla, and many others to calm their spirits, to calm their souls. But here we can, as residents of Ladakh, as part of the Union Territory of Ladakh, we can question ourselves that is Leh or Ladakh still the same as described by the author in this story? Is Ladakh still having that spiritual charm, that spiritual resource, or has it been lost due to the increased tourism, due to the population explosion Ladakh had through these decades, due to the increased level of pollution, whether it's noise, sound, or air pollution, the growing rates of crime, and the infrastructural developments that is taking place at such a mammoth rate in Ladakh. Also, the threats to the culture of Ladakh, the westernization of culture, the completely blindly copying anything which is popular and famous in the West by Ladakhis, especially students, and the loss of faith and belief in the age-old tradition and cultures of Ladakh. These thoughts, these observations poses serious questions to what the narrators presents in the story. That's Ladakh, though the valleys and hinterlands, though the valleys and higher altitudes of Ladakh might be presenting some aspects, some strange, some mysterious aspects to the visitors, to the foreigners, but when they reside, when they live in the cities, when they visit, when they stay in the resorts, guest house, and big hotels, they might not be having a completely different feeling from the one they used to have it in the big city, because Ladakh is also presenting them all the facilities, all the things, but still comparatively little, but not completely aloof from the modern industrialized developed countries or bigger cities. So with this thought, I end the chapter Leh, and I thank you all for watching the video.